All right, welcome everyone to the July 20th council meeting. Remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and you can join in on Zoom, and certainly go to the website www.parrysound.ca, and where the meetings will be recorded. I'd like to also acknowledge at this particular time that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty and the waterways traveled by the Métis. Prior to the open session, we had a closed meeting. It was moved by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Bachman. Pursuant to Section 239.2 and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, proposed property exchange, and K, position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, proposed property exchange. That was carried and the meeting was held. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the agenda, please? Councillor Borneman and Councillor McCann, that the council agenda for July 20th, 2021 be approved as circulated. Any discussion or changes to the agenda? No? Okay. Anyone opposed to the passing of the agenda then? No, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Councillor Burton.
Yes, item 10.1.1, the bylaw, that property belongs to a close relative of mine. So I'd like to declare a conflict.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? No? Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to take a few minutes and hold an electronic public meeting to hear any interested persons with regard to 3 proposed applications under the Planning Act. May I have a mover and seconder for this one? Councillor Bachman, Councillor Burden, that we do now adjourn the regular meeting and declare the public meeting open. Anyone opposed to that? Nope, that's carried then. Ms. Johnson, can you explain how the public was notified of the first zoning bylaw amendment, Z21/08, 19 Miller Street, FAD Architects Incorporated, on behalf of Kazmani?
Yes, Your Worship, notice was given by prepaid first-class mail to the required prescribed agencies and property owners within 120 meters. It was posted on the property and placed on the town's website.
Thank you. Mr. Algie, can you explain the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
Certainly. The applicant has requested to change the zoning of the property from C1 to permit 7 residential dwelling units within the existing building. The applicant has requested for the parking spaces to extend over onto the municipal road allowance as well. The lands are known as 19 Miller Street and legally described as part of lot 8 on Plan 7.
Thank you. As this is an electronic public meeting under the Planning Act, due to COVID-19, we call upon those in electronic attendance. If they wish to comment, please make sure that you have your screen on and that you signal the camera or raise your hand if you wish to speak. Our moderator will call out the individuals when it's their turn to speak, so please keep your microphone muted until it's your turn. So at this time, does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? If so, please identify yourself by name and give your address. I'm not seeing it. I'll ask once more. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Okay, I see Mohammed seems to be lighting up.
Hi, my name is Baham, and I'm actually the new owner of this property.
Okay,
So I believe there was a Brenda from Fed who was authorized to complete and speak on all of this. So I'm not too sure if she's on the call.
I see. Yep, I do see that it looks like someone from FAD is here.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm because I don't know too much about this, and I just authorized her to complete all the necessary. So
Okay. Ms. Ryan, were you going to say anything or?
No, I don't think I needed to speak specifically about it. I think it's a fairly straightforward application and ask. So just really here if anyone had any questions or comments or needed any further information.
Okay. All right then. So I'm going to move and I think we've covered those that wish to speak in favor. Does anyone wish to speak now in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And if so, please identify yourself by name and give your address. Not seeing anything, but I will ask once more. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Not seeing anyone. So thank you, Mr. Algie. Have there been any letters received as a result of this notice?
Yes, there has, your worship.
Okay.
Hugh Logan of Logan's of Parry Sound wrote in opposition of the application, noting that although no new rental units are a good thing, they don't feel this location is suited for so many units. And also they don't believe the municipal parking should be made available for residential uses. And they're worried about parking overflow. As well as another letter was submitted by, just give me a second while it's opening, by Brian Moore in opposition. Had concerns also with the proposed additional units and the lack of parking, as there's currently a deficit on the street today, and this seems to be making it a bit worse. This had also resulted in elimination of green space along Mary Street due to putting parking on all parts of the property where it can go. And the third point is a parking extension onto municipal property, the overhang. They're also not in favor of this, and that is it.
Okay. Thank you. And now for the second zoning bylaw amendment. Ms. Johnson, can you explain how the public was notified of the zoning bylaw amendment Z21-09-106 William Street, Barnes?
Again, your worship, notice has been given by prepaid first-class mail to the required prescribed agencies and property owners within 120 meters, posted on the property and placed on the town's website.
Thank you. Mr. Algie, can you explain the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
The applicant has requested to change the zoning from R2 to permit conditionally approved severance, reductions to lot coverage, lot depth, the minimum front yard and minimum rear yard, as well as lot area have been requested. Lands are known as 106 William Street or part of lot 58 on Plan 22.
Thank you. As this is an electronic public meeting under the Planning Act, due to COVID-19, we'll call upon those in electronic attendance. If they wish to comment, please make sure you have your screen on and that you signal the camera or raise your hand if you wish to speak. Moderator will call out individuals when it's their turn to speak. Please keep your microphone muted until it is your turn to speak. So at this time, does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And if so, please identify yourself by name and address.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of the rezoning.
Mr. Barnes, yep.
Yes. Should I just go ahead?
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Just briefly, this rezoning application is what I'm hoping is going to be the last stage of moving forward with my original severance application for 106 William Street and 2 Hillcrest Avenue. It's been quite a process. The severance was initially approved by the Parry Sound Area Planning Board and referred back to the town. During the council meeting in March, Mr. LG raised some concerns about my application. The application then went back to Parry Sound Area Planning Board. And at that subsequent meeting, I was able to address Mr. LG's concerns fully. There was not any disagreement or pushback from the councillors on the board and on my submissions, and the severance was approved unanimously. This rezoning is the final stage, hopefully, so that I can achieve my severance and hopefully get on with my life. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Not seeing anyone, but I will ask once more. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Okay. We'll move on to, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And if so, please state your name and your address. Not seeing anyone, but I will ask once more, just in case. Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? No? Okay, thank you. Mr. LG, have there been any letters received as a result of this notice?
Yes, we've received one letter to date from John Este. He's opposed. He notes that the proposal seems to fly in the face of good planning, as he has concerns about compatible land uses. And he thinks that most people expect to have a front in a rear yard or some type of green space. And the proposed lot front in Hillcrest does not meet normal expectations. He also notes that if it is to receive approval, there should be a height restriction on the lands to avoid a downtown wind tunnel situation. And third point is, as it stands now, the existing lots meet provincial expectations for intensification. Turning it into 2 lots, both of which fail to meet reasonable expectations, will not be good planning, but it's very possible that the occupants of both lots would have quiet enjoyment, would not have quiet enjoyment due to the proximity of their neighbors. And he has concerns also about how this could conflict with snow clearing issues and whatnot. And that's it so far.
Great. Now for the third zoning bylaw amendment. Ms. Johnson, can you explain how the public was notified of zoning bylaw amendment Z 21-10-14 and 18 Bow Street, Upton?
Again, notice has been given by prepaid first-class mail to the required prescribed agencies and property owners within 120 meters, posted on the property and placed on the town's website.
Okay. Mr. LG, can you explain the purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment?
The applicant has requested to amend the SP 26.35 holding zone to permit a mixed-use development with office space on the main floor and 7 residential units above and behind the commercial use. This type of building will be on each of the 2 lots there. The amendment will increase commercial residential floor area ratio, lift the holding symbol, and modify the rear yard setback that currently applies for an auto dealership. The lands are known as 14 and 18 Bow Street.
Okay. As this is an electronic public meeting under the Planning Act due to COVID-19, we'll call upon those in electronic attendance if they wish to comment. Please make sure you have your screen on and you signal the camera or raise your hand if you wish to speak. Moderator will call out individuals when it's their turn to speak. Please keep your microphone muted until it is your turn to speak. So at this time, does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? And if so, please state your name and your address. Not seeing anything, so I will ask once more. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Okay, we'll go to, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? Not seeing anything. Again, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? No. Okay, thanks everybody. Mr. LG, have there been any letters received as a result of the notice?
There has been one letter received from Mr. Joe Bossart that is neither in favor nor opposed, just noting that they're in receipt of it. We did receive a voicemail from Will Vowles that is an opposed to it, and I will send that by cover of email so council can hear it. I don't think there's any way for me to play it from my computer over the speaker. At least I don't know how to do that. But I'll make sure council gets that, and my report will reflect it as well.
Very good. All right, thank you. The public should contact staff or check the town's website to see if these amendments will come back for a decision. Council, at its discretion, may approve the proposed zoning bylaw amendments, and if so, it must either circulate notice of passing of the bylaw or give notice in the local press. Objections to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk within 20 days from the date such notice is given, which objections will be forwarded to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If an appeal is submitted and the appellant has not provided council with an oral or written submission before the passing of the bylaw, the Ontario Land Tribunal may choose to dismiss the appeal. Thank you, everyone, and may I have a mover and seconder to declare the public meeting closed? Councillor McCann, Councillor Borneman, that we do now declare the public meeting closed. Anyone opposed? Nope, that's carried then. Back to the regular agenda. Okay, may I have a mover and seconder for the minutes, please? Councillor McCann, Councillor Burden. That the minutes from the regular council meeting held July 4th, 2021 be approved as circulated. Is there any discussion or comments on those minutes? No? Anyone opposed to the passing of those minutes? No, so that's carried. Questions of staff? Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure that I can see Mr. Cairns here tonight. I'm not sure if anyone else can answer if he isn't, but I seen some equipment yesterday at the boat launch at the salt dock. I'm wondering if the installation has been completed, or if we're at least should have hope that it will be in the near future.
Yes, through Your Worship. So certainly there is hope. We were waiting for materials to come in, so staff began the installation, and we will notify everybody once it's open for use and safe and ready to go. So,
Care to hazard on a timeline? Hazard a guess?
I'm not a great gambler. Soon, very soon.
Okay, Councillor Keith, you're next.
Yes, well, thank you. And Mr. Cairns, I like that answer soon, but I guess if you're a tortoise, soon is all relative, isn't it, compared to the hair? I would also say that I was up in your neck of the woods here, Quaw Falls, just recently. So that I think that you can identify that with that. And actually, the weather was quite warm. But what I'm wondering, and it does relate in a way to warmth also, where we are for COVID-19 now. Is it possible that there will be able to be a park bench on Joseph Street between Isabella and the Parry Sound Mall on the west side? Is that going to be possible soon so that people walking that have accessibility issues will be able to have a rest? Is that a possibility? Or if not, there is a rock about halfway that's kind of flat. Could we put some markings around it so maybe people could use that as a seat?
Through your worship, certainly, I think at this point, obviously, we're in a little different circumstance than we were last summer. So that's something we'll take a close look at. And thank you for reminding me. It's something that perhaps we haven't been focused on, unfortunately, just given the circumstances. But I think it's possible. Obviously, social distancing is still a recommended activity. So whether we can install some of those with the appropriate signage, we will certainly take a look at getting them out there for use.
My follow-up, Mr. Cairns, in some communities I've seen where they have a park bench and they really only want one person seated on it, they've put like a yellow ribbon across or something. So it communicates the message. The second person isn't to be seated there, but it allows the person that needs to be seated there to have it. So I hope it can be looked into because there is a need. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Mr. Cairns. I've had several calls in regards to the orange spray paint markings throughout the community, and I'm just wondering if you can explain what that is.
Certainly, through your worship. So under the minimum, under the minimum maintenance standards, which the town of Parry Sound follows for maintenance of our infrastructure, there is a process for inspecting and treating deficiencies in sidewalks. And the orange paint is actually a recognized treatment. It's intended to draw attention to potential hazards within the sidewalk until such time as we can get out and mitigate those. And there's several, it depends on the size of the deficiency, the extent of the deficiency as to what the actual repair is. So we will be prioritizing those repairs based on the severity of the deficiencies noted. So some people may notice that the deficiencies are treated again in order to make sure that they are readily evident to people using the sidewalks. But that will not be the end of it. It just means that we've started on higher, more severe deficiencies within the sidewalk first. So some of them may be remarked, but it is considered a treatment and it is meant to draw attention to make it safer for people using the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Just as a follow-up, Mr. Cairns, in regards to the use of color, under the circumstances of the residential schools and the orange resemblance reflecting that, is there an opportunity to change the color of use for these markings?
Through your worship, certainly it was in no way meant to be associated with any of the circumstances surrounding. Unfortunately, that is the temporary condition marking for construction activities within the province. You'll often see the orange highway markings in construction zones and that sort of thing. So normally that's why orange is chosen, because it is a temporary kind of cautionary color within the construction industry and within the Highway Traffic Act. So that's typically why it's used. I guess it's something we can look at, but it's typically fluorescent orange is one of the most highly visible colors, and that's why it's chosen often, as well as the other reasons under the Highway Traffic Act and construction zones.
Well, I have seen fluorescent green recently. I was traveling through another community, so that is something I would, just throw out there. But in regards to the noting these efficiencies, do we log this through a GIS, or how do we attain this data so that we are, we have that in a system?
So through your worship, yes, as a matter of fact, staff developed an internal application. So we're utilizing cell phones with GPS antennas to increase our accuracy, and it is being logged within a GIS layer in town. So we are able to track those deficiencies, and as they're repaired, they will also be noted within our database. So ideally in an asset management program, which we are embarking on and improving, that kind of information gives us a lot of good information for planning in the future as well. We start to be able to pull up electronic data that is a little more telling. It's easier to view on a map, for instance, and see kind of hot spots. If there's problematic areas, perhaps we'll have to look at different construction methods or technologies or those sorts of things. So sometimes these things are beneficial from that perspective as well. But yes, we are doing that electronically.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Mr. Curran seems to be on the hot seat this evening, and I certainly don't mean to put you on the spot. And we all know that living in Northern Ontario means living with potholes, and we have some real doozies in town. And I just very, very recently sent you an email about a real doozy, which is in front of the Dairy Queen, a sunken manhole cover. There are places around town and they're bad, and some people could lose their suspension or a muffler running over some of them. You don't always see them coming. I know that from redeeming empty cans and bottles for Friends of Belvedere. I'm at the beer store a few times a week, and there are some tremendous potholes that are on town property and trying to drive over to get into the parking lot. So I guess I'm looking for a timeline when we know that the bad ones can be fixed, and we talk about prioritizing remediation of the sidewalks. But what about the potholes? If somebody sees something that's bad enough that an automobile could sustain damage, who should they call, and what kind of an expectation? And I know your staff is busy, but what kind of a timeline or expectation would people have before these things are repaired?
Through your worship. So certainly I would encourage them to call the town office through the Public Works Department, and it will be logged and distributed. Along the same lines as the sidewalk deficiencies, potholes are actually a defined deficiency in the road surface under the minimum maintenance standard as well. So we certainly, I can say, with a great deal of confidence, we exceed the response time under the minimum maintenance standards, because the potholes defined in the legislation are actually quite large. And I'm sure none of us would want to drive through the ones that are actually permitted to remain. They're not really defined as a pothole until they exceed a certain size. So our staff are out constantly patrolling and logging those. So now the repair of the potholes, we use a recycled hot mix asphalt in our process of repairing the potholes. So it's not something you want to try and do when they're full of water or when it's raining, those sorts of things. So that's unfortunately, sometimes it's perhaps a little longer period between identifying and repairing. But the minimum maintenance standards spell out the defined, much in the way they do for winter maintenance, the defined timelines for repair of those things. But that's not something we shoot for. We typically exceed that timeline. So it really depends on, there's a lot of variables. I'm sorry, I can't really give you an answer that it's a defined certain number of days, but we will respond to the potholes. Again, depends on the traffic volume, where it's located, you know, is it in the traveled lane, that sort of thing. So you're mentioning some at the entrance to the beer store, and perhaps if it's off the traveled lane, it's
Yeah,
not
it would
really
be. It's actually,
yeah.
I guess, between the road and the parking lot, but it is town property, boulevard,
So-
whatever you want to call it.
So I might suggest that the property owners that have those driveways or entrances would be responsible for those repairs in particular. We don't typically stray from the traveled roadway in our road maintenance. That in often the town allowance is quite far up certain driveways. So
Yeah.
typically the property owners are responsible for the maintenance of their actual entrances.
Well, I didn't know that. That's
So-
interesting.
Now that there are some variables within that, but I think generally speaking, for the surface discontinuities and that sort of thing, that would be something the property owner would be responsible for maintaining.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Burden.
Yeah, I've got a quick question for Mr. Kearns, please. Mike, on behalf of the DBA, they've asked me to inquire as to whether or not we've been able to hire a student to help with the downtown cleanup this summer.
So through your worship, unfortunately, I think, you know, we discussed it a little bit last council meeting, and certainly if anybody knows of anyone that's looking for summer employment, even though we're fairly far through summer. And you know what, in speaking with colleagues all over the province, I'm not sure what's going on. It's very difficult to hire people, whether it's strictly COVID related or just kind of a shift in the way summer employment is observed. I'm not sure, but unfortunately, no. We've been very challenged right across the board in terms of hiring for summer help. So.
Just a quick follow-up to that. What is the minimum age of a person that the town is allowed to hire for that sort of thing?
Well, that's somewhat variable as well, depending on the task at hand. It can be as low as 14, depending on the work environment, the type of equipment. You know, traditionally municipalities and we are included in that group would like to hire someone at least 16 years of age. Generally speaking, for most of the tasks that we would be assigning them to, that would be an appropriate age.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question, Mr. Cairns, for Mr. Cairns, just a follow up in regards to the Salt Dock boat launch. Is the implementation of the new concrete slabs, is that a short-term or long-term solution?
Through your worship, I certainly hope it's more long than short. My understanding, we just completed an underwater investigation of the wharf down there, and they were going to have a look at kind of what's going on in the areas that we can't see readily. So I'll have a better understanding of perhaps what we're facing, whether it's a short or a long term. But I think I've learned some of the history as to how that boat launch has come to be and how it's been kind of kept in operation over the years. So it's in a very challenging location. Obviously, it drops off fairly significantly to allow those salt boats to come in. So there's a fair bit of depth right at the edge of the dock. So I think one of the challenges over the years has been keeping material where it needs to stay to support the launch. So our idea here was that at least this portion of the dock was the one that was impacted. Again, the asphalt was run out quite a ways when the water was down, apparently. And that asphalt doesn't perform very well. It's not strong, doesn't have the same strength as concrete when it comes to ice and water impacts. So it took a fair bit of a beating. We're also going to be looking at some of the way in which water flows down there. I've noticed during the last few rainstorms, there's a significant amount of water that runs right down the boat launch, which isn't going to be conducive to a longer term solution. So we're going to look at some things we can do to get that water off the boat launch and safely out into the bay.
Okay, just as a follow-up, in regards to the timing of the repair, if it doesn't happen soon, do you think it would be possible to place some type of signage to advise people of other locations?
Through your worship, certainly it will, that would be possible, yes. And I believe, in speaking with Ms. Kruger about some of the parking changes that we discussed a little while back down there, we were planning on including some QR codes on the signage so that it would direct people to the other areas that are available as well, just in case there's any sort of a backlog at those boat launches, they would have the ability to scan a QR code. That was some of our discussions. So certainly those are things that we can implement. My hope is we don't need to do that. So we're going to hope to have it open very shortly.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we've got some good questions in there for staff. So we're going to go to correspondence with Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have just 2 items of correspondence. The first is from Jay Aspin, the board chair of the Near North District School Board, and it's in response to a resolution that was passed at the last council meeting. And that resolution, just as a reminder, was requesting that the Near North District School Board convene a new accommodation review committee for the junior kindergarten to grade 12 mega school, and that an independent study of enrollment and population figures be completed prior to the finalization of the JK to grade 12 mega school. So the response from Mr. Aspin indicated that there were several engagement opportunities, and at each presentation, the community was invited to provide feedback through the board's website. The information, together with comments provided through other means, such as the resolution that the town passed, which I just quoted from, has been compiled and a report posted online on July 16th. At the time this letter was written, that was something that was to happen. We received a notice today from administrative assistant to Mr. Aspin that report has indeed been posted on the board's website. The second item of correspondence is from Michelle Fraser, Chief Financial Officer of Seguin Township, a letter confirming that Seguin Township is contributing $10,000 towards the Stockey Center operating costs. So a letter of appreciation has been sent out to Seguin Township as of yesterday. And those are the items of correspondence.
Thank you. There are no deputations, so we'll go to reports. And again, I'll just go across the screen. So first one's Councillor McCann.
Okay, well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and public. I've had a few busy weeks as a councillor, but certainly nothing to report on here tonight. So I'll just take this opportunity to remind you that I'm always available. You can catch me on the web at dougmccann.ca, and all my contact information is there. So continue to enjoy the summer, keep safe, and please drive carefully when you're out there. That's that.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. I've had actually a quiet couple of weeks. I have attended a couple of meetings with the ad hoc committee at Belvedere. That item is back on this evening's agenda, so I'll speak to it then. And as Councillor McCann said, there have been some boating accidents in particular in the area in the past couple of weeks, so I would encourage everyone to use some common sense, exercise caution, and stay safe out there. Enjoy the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 8th, I took part in the monthly meeting of the District Social Services Administration Board. The firm HSC that is working on our long-range plan for the next 5 years brought us up to date with their progress, and they appear to be doing a thorough job, and we look forward to having that final report still by September. On July 14th, I attended the monthly meeting of the Downtown Business Association. The only events that will hopefully happen this year will be Halloween in collaboration with the library and the Girlfriends Week, which is being planned for the week of November 15th to 21st. The new DBA Executive Administrator, Liz Bohm, is working hard and appears to be doing a great job. My lady and I joined the group of volunteers that took the look after the downtown flower gardens on Saturday morning this past week. And I can assure you this group is really dedicated to what they are doing. They work very hard and their efforts are paying off. The downtown looks great. And we all owe these people a huge thank you. I would like to just take a moment to recognize the passing of an old friend, Bob Drummond. Bob was a tremendous citizen here in Parry Sound for many years. He came here as a manager with the CIBC Bank, and when they tried to promote him and move him somewhere else, he wouldn't go. He said, no, he's not leaving Parry Sound. So he switched over to become a partner at Tunup Insurance. And Bob was he was involved in all kinds of things here in town, and as well as being my Sunday morning golf partner for many years. So my condolences to Bob's wife, Brenda, and the rest of the family. And that is my report.
Thanks, Councillor Burden. I'll pass those thanks on to my wife for the flower beds downtown. She's really enjoying actually getting out there early in the morning, and they're up and starting before 8 o'clock and
Yep.
flower beds and getting rid of the weeds and fixing things up. So it's looking really good.
And, yeah, great bunch.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Well, yes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I'd like to say that although I've been on vacation for the past week from my full-time job, I still did my best to fulfill my responsibilities on council, thanks to virtual meetings. So that's worked out very well. I attended the advisory accessibility committee meeting. There was full attendance there, and that was really great, especially when it's summer. Sometimes the numbers do get lower, shall we say. At that meeting, there was a discussion regarding accessibility and Mission Park. There were some areas that the town staff have worked on, and there were suggestions still made, and that actually opened the conversation to the need for an up-to-date accessibility strategic plan that goes with, of course, the town's strategic plan, so they dovetail together. And so as a result of that, what is happening now is preparations are being made and information gathered from various plans in Ontario, and that will come back to the Accessibility Committee for them to review and to hopefully make some recommendations that they think that can assist our community, and eventually that coming to council to see if what support council can provide there for our community. So that meeting went pretty well, and the next meeting would be in October. So we should be hopefully at that time able to provide more information. So that was good. The other would be, I attended the Community Policing Advisory Committee meeting, and the positive news is that when you compare the statistics from the second quarter, April to June of this year compared to last year, first of all, our numbers are down in respect to crime, in respect to property violence behavior, and drugs. There is actually less, and especially less when you compare overall West Parry Sound. So things have been lower in that area, and so that's good to see. Let's hope that continues. The foot patrols in Parry Sound itself have increased. The unfortunate thing, though, that was seen in the last quarter was the increase in speeding. And I think that some of us may have observed that even within the town of Parry Sound, because I've noticed at times the 40 zones seems to be in summertime. If people have a need to go somewhere, they seem to be very dim in being able to read that sign, and they have a heavy foot. So I'm hoping that with police out there discouraging and enforcing that the speed there can be lower. The last thing I would like to say, in my endeavor, in my week, I usually put on a few number of kilometers on a vehicle when I take a vacation. So it probably helps out the gas company, if nothing else. And I like to always take some municipal pins from the town of Parry Sound when I meet people in other communities, because it's my way of marketing Parry Sound. Because sometimes people say, oh yeah, I know where it is. Then they get it mixed up with Owen Sound and who knows from where, or Port Perry. So when they got the pin and it's right there, they say, oh, okay, I could look that up. But I had the privilege to go to attend a few municipal offices during my time. And so I went up. My aunt had turned 100 on July 11th, and she lives in her own house, and she turned 100. So I'm hoping I can get at least 100. And so she turned 100, and I wanted to be there for her birthday that day. So she was up in Thunder Bay. And from there, anyways, I eventually ended up in Nakina, which was an interesting spot. Although when I got up there, a couple of people asked me, what are you doing up here? I said, I just want to see what it was like. They said, usually that's not the reason people come. They want to go fishing or whatever. But of course, the tourism has decreased this year. So I thought it was really interesting to see their airport, to see the area. And then, of course, I continued on to Cochrane and eventually made it down here within the week for the meeting. But what I wanted to say, because I tell you all that, is, of course, I went and I checked out various beaches. And of course, I had to check out the swimming because I like to swim. And I want to say that although in any community, you can always do better. And in the town of Parry Sound, I'm sure we're striving to keep doing better. But we have a very, very lovely beaches here. Very clean beaches here. And I think until you go away and you see other places, we actually do a fine job. I'd never hit any place that had an accessibility mat on the beach like us. And it's just remarkable what we're doing. And like, can we keep it up? Yes. The other thing I would like to say is I noticed when I went to various municipalities, I think that in some ways, we may not realize at times how well our public, and yes, we can always keep doing better, but how well our public service is in our community. And one of the things that I noticed, which we have here that other municipalities often do not have, if you make a telephone call to that municipality, you don't ever get to speak to a human, and you get lost somewhere. Whereas in the town of Parry Sound, when you make a telephone call here and you don't even know who it is, you will eventually, if you stay on the phone, you will get a human, a receptionist who can guide you and send you to whatever, through extension to that department, so you can leave that information. And I think that's really valuable because it shows that we are accountable and we are transparent. And I'm telling you, when you're frustrated and you're trying to find out something, that is really important. So I think that we should kind of say, yeah, we are doing something right here. So that's it for my report, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing liked our beaches, so that was good. Councillor Backen.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Councillor Keith had noted, we had an accessibility meeting this month, which I was happy to attend. And as noted, it's great to see that we are moving forward with an accessibility plan. Our staff working on this committee appears to have a real understanding of what the committee has as a desire, and I believe the approach that they've presented to us will be a great steps moving forward. I was very fortunate to also have the opportunity to participate with the Downtown Gardeners as a past director for the DBA for several years. That place definitely holds a special place in my heart. Often I am camping on the weekends and exploring Georgian Bay, but every time I do have an opportunity, I get out in the morning and like to enjoy the downtown core. So kudos to everybody. And it was really nice to see Mary Garvey, your wife Allison, participating as well as the great job that Bernice Anderson continues to work to bring in many of the seniors in our community that just like to participate and really have a sense of community. Last month, I also attended the RTO 12 AGM. And as part of the AGM, what I found very interesting as they presented the overview of their business and operational plan is that one of the items to note is that they are working on a catalyst housing project. So I think that there may be opportunity for us to invite Executive Director James Murphy back to the council table, or potentially have our economic development officer meet with him to find out more of how that might benefit the town of Parry Sound and the region as a whole. I'd like to note that we haven't had any meetings with Park to Park, but we have some really great news on Friday. We received a notification that we were awarded a $60,000 grant from the Trans-Canada Trail. Currently, there is a portion of the Trans-Canada Trail, which is a national trail that goes through right now the Sequin Trail, obviously with the large portion of work that is required. That is definitely assistance for us. And of course, will be very beneficial to the economic impact that trail will have and does have in our community. And as well as traveling, most recently, I traveled to Northwestern Ontario, very similar to Councillor Keith. I'm always exploring the communities, but now as a councillor, it was really great to connect with colleagues that I've met at some of the past conferences. And it's really interesting that we all have similar issues, environmental issues, social issues, housing issues, and really we're all just separated by distance. So, in one particular community I stopped was in Nipigon with their recent $2 million investment to the community to provide their tower. It was really neat to climb up another tower to overlook and see the community. Admittedly, by far, Parry Sound, we do have one amazing view at the top of our tower hill, and I have yet to see a community have such beauty. So I just wanted to say that, it really is great that as we move forward into allowing visitors both into our community and to other communities, that everybody has a chance to explore this summer. And of course, just continue to be safe. As everyone stated, there have been a lot of fatalities and accidents on our waters. And I just encourage everyone of all ages to continue to wear your PFDs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council staff and public, July 8th at 10 a.m. I had an AMO pre-meeting to prepare for the MOU meeting with the province. Then at 1 p.m. on that day, I attended the actual AMO MOU meeting. July 8th at 6:30, as Councillor Burden mentioned, was the Parry Sound District Social Services Board meeting, and he's covered that very well. July 15th, I attended the AMO Indigenous Task Force meeting. And then July 18th, my wife and I attended the Festival of the Sound Boat Cruise. Festival is doing what it can to provide entertainment during these challenging times. And if you have a chance to attend a show, please do. And today, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, was in town for a little bit. So I was able to have a quick meeting with him. And yeah, he really enjoyed our community. So our MPP, Norm Miller, was also showing him around, and it was great that he could actually be here. So, two things. One, they only have the stats for the health unit for the whole, like Parry Sound and Nipissing district. So residents that have had one dose that are 12 and over, right now at 75.6% have had one dose. Residents 12 and over fully vaccinated, 60.63%. That's good. Let's keep it going. I'm really hoping that they can actually break it down, Parry Sound District and Nipissing District. I think that would really, really help. Also, the Civic Scholarship. I'd like to remind college and university students that the town is currently accepting applications for the 2021 Civic Scholarship Award. The $500 scholarship is awarded annually to one university or college student who's a permanent resident of the town of Parry Sound and is entering their second year of full-time classes in September. Full eligibility criteria and an application form can be found on the town's website. Just search scholarship. Deadline for the receipt of applications is July 30th. So get them in there. Okay. First item 921, moved by Councillor Bachman, second by Councillor McCann. The council approved the 2021 second quarter progress report on the town's key performance objectives, or KPOs, as set out in Schedule A. Discussion. Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if Mr. Harris would like to give the public a 140, the Twitter version of
Polls notes.
what's happened with this to date.
Certainly, through the mayor, happy to do that. This report is a quarterly report. The primary objective is to report to council and the public on a quarterly basis the progress that the town has made, staff and council, on the strategic priorities that came out of the updated strategic plan in 2019. There's some major projects that we have underway. The progress is updated on a quarterly basis. And I think importantly, there's progress being made, even though we had a significant amount of distraction and effort required with COVID. Some of the major projects are a DC bylaw capacity study for our water and wastewater, both the system and the plants themselves. Those studies are underway, and a number of other projects that I'm happy to answer any questions on. One of the other pieces of information that we provide, in addition to status of various projects, we've started to add quarterly statistics that we think members of council and public may find useful. One of the statistics that I was looking at that I found really encouraging is housing, and the housing shortage is an issue in town and across many parts of Ontario. Last year, for the entire year, we had issued 16 residential permits to date. So in half the year, we've already issued 15. So we've almost met last year's entire number of residential permits issued, and we're only halfway through this year. We've also, council's also approved a number of applications for new residential units. I believe it's just shy of 100 so far. So there's a lot of projects in the works. It's still a while for shovels in the ground, but we're tracking those things that we think residents would find useful. The value of building permits issued last year was 15.7 million. To date, it's just over 7 million. So I think we're on track to halfway through the year. We're on track to be pretty close to last year's number in terms of construction value. So there's a lot of work, a lot of construction taking place in the town. And I'm certainly willing and able to answer any questions you may have on specific projects.
Anything further? Councillor Bachman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Harris, for the update. Just in regards to 2 items, or one specifically, the recreation plan. I see that it has a completion date of the 4th quarter of 2021. Are we still on track with that?
Through the mayor, I'll refer that to perhaps Ms. McNamara or Mr. Kearns.
Okay.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Bachman, I have to advise that the RFP that was recently published, there were no successful bidders that came in for that project. I am going to have to reissue the RFP. So it is on track to be happening by the 4th quarter. Completion may or may not be there yet.
Just to clarify, sorry, you were breaking up, and forgive me, it's probably my connection here. Did you say it was recently published?
It was published in May. I'll just keep my video off. It may be my connection as well. It was published in May. It did close in late June. It was published through Municipal World as well as on our local website and through AMCTO. We did not have any bids or proponents. Therefore, staff are going to have to seek out qualified professionals to advise that this is the RFP that is out right now, and we are seeking qualified proposals. Frankly, I've been in consultation with many other rec departments across the province. We're all in the same boat right now, and it is difficult to find a qualified candidate to do this kind of work, or company.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? I'd like to thank everybody for putting this together. I think it's a good snapshot of where we are and where we're going. So that's good. All right. Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? No? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Burden, whereas the town is the heart of the Georgian Bay Biosphere, which is a region of global ecological significance that has an ongoing commitment to the United Nations and sustainability. And whereas environmental stewardship is a strategic priority for the town, and whereas access to and the use of the waterfront is integral to the town's identity, and whereas the town has a diverse and active waterfront user and business community, and whereas the town wishes to enhance the waterfront as a people gathering place, now therefore be it resolved, an ad hoc waterfront advisory committee be approved per the terms of reference attached to Schedule A. Councillor McCann.
Yes, I'm glad this has come back. When we had this in front of us at the last time, I think collectively we were looking at something bigger than the people who were originally on this committee were asking for. And they just want to be the eyes of the waterfront and be in a position to notice things that need to be done and report back to council. So what the big difference here is that the word development is not part of this, but I'm sure that they would be happy to work at any point in time with our own EDC, if and when that was necessary. But this committee will be in a good position to offer any kind of advice to their frontline people. I would ask that we make an amendment that the boundaries in the terms be expanded from from border to border and not just constricted to the downtown area, so that the entire waterfront on Georgian Bay of Parry Sound is within the catchment area of the purview of this committee.
So the border of Seguin and to the border of McDougall.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
So if I can put a motion
Do we
forward
have
for
a
that.
seconder? Councillor Keith, seconds that. Okay, any comments on the amendment? No? Okay, anyone opposed to passing the amendment? Councillor Bachman?
Sorry.
You're muted.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I do have a question, Your Worship.
Yep.
If maybe Mr. Harris, since you're the spokesperson to this, if you can just clarify what exactly would be the responsibility of this committee again?
Can we deal with the amendment first?
Oh, okay, sorry.
We have an
Forgive me.
amendment. Okay,
Apologies, yes.
all right. Okay, so with regard to the amendment, is there anyone opposed to the amendment to this resolution? No, no one's opposed, so it is amended. Okay. Now, Councillor Bachman, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just to reiterate, if Mr. Harris, if you could just explain what exactly this committee would be doing.
Certainly through the chair to Councillor Bachman. Point 3 in the terms of reference to the roles and responsibilities of the members. I'll read the opening paragraph. The role of the Waterfront Advisory Committee is to be proactive and provide advice to council regarding the waterfront, including the environmental stewardship, education, beautification, and opportunities to enhance the waterfront as a people gathering place. A couple of examples of how that mandate could be achieved: researching what other waterfront communities are doing. Aurelia, Barry, Midland, etc., all have waterfronts, and there may be something that we can learn from what they're doing and apply it here in town. Working with other groups such as the Biosphere, the DBA, the Economic Development Officer. So could be a collaborative approach, working with others, and engaging the public as well, or business operators on their thoughts.
Yeah, follow up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess just as a follow-up, Mr. Harris, I guess if we do move forward with a waterfront development plan, and this committee then is making decisions based on short-term solutions, because we don't have really the long-term vision in place. And I'm just trying to understand, is this something where we're putting the cart before the horse?
Through the mayor, we don't, staff don't think so. Environmental stewardship, should be present in everything that we do. Making the downtown area a people gathering place. I mean, we've had some events down there. Maybe there's an opportunity for more. We have cruise ships that comes there that come to the waterfront. Is there ways to take better advantage of that from a tourism perspective? We're submitting a grant to enhance the fitness trail, which draws people into the downtown and particularly in the harbor area. So that's an ongoing thing. I think the waterfront concept plan that council approved, the concept, there may be some details that you might want to tweak, but I reviewed it not too long ago, and I think it's still relevant. It's not out in, sort of my opinion, I don't think it's out in left field. We might want to refine it. So I think this is an evolutionary thing. And I think if we stop and waited for everything to be in place and be perfect, we'd be wasting time. I think this is an ongoing thing. And as we tweak the waterfront concept plan, this committee could provide their input on what they think as about the waterfront concept plan, as well as other members of the public.
Okay.
Yes, I guess just as a follow-up, that was the one thing I was looking for, is engaging the entire community on this. I understand that we have a committee, but I think it's important that we do engage the entire community at any point possible when making these decisions. So I would encourage that this committee moving forward find ways to incorporate that into their process. So thank you very much. This sounds wonderful.
Councillor Barneman, then Councillor McCann. Oh, and then Councillor Keith. Okay.
So a few questions, I guess, with Mr. Harris, Your Worship. I just want to ensure that we are following through with what we'd agreed to the last time with a review of the waterfront master plan, and that there will be some sort of public engagement. I wanted to say that, you know, I appreciate very much the work that was done by the prior committee, excuse me, but there are a host of new business owners in the waterfront. So I hope that their thoughts and opinions will be, they'll be given opportunity to express those thoughts and opinions. I had opportunity to speak to a representative from Parry Sound last week, and they're very much interested in participating wherever possible. And finally, from a practical point of view, again, I should have mentioned this earlier in my councillor's report, that I wanted to thank Jessie Langford for all of her years of service and dedication to the town. Jessie and Ms. Middaugh were the two staff people involved with the prior rendition of this committee. Practically, how are we, do we have a staffing plan? Do we have how is this going to take flight from here? Do we have an idea how that's going to take place, in a time frame in which the public could expect to see advertisements seeking committee members? Because I would take it that it wouldn't just revert it, that we would go out and give everyone opportunity to participate in this.
Through the mayor to Councillor Borneman, to your first point about updating the concept, the waterfront concept plan, I think it's critical, as you've indicated, that members of the public, all members of the public, get a chance to comment. I mean, that is certainly the town's most precious asset. Everybody values it, and how we see it unfolding in the future, everybody needs an opportunity to provide their input. The committee, the Waterfront Advisory Committee, may have one perspective and may agree with a lot of the residents, but we need to hear from everybody. So that's no question that we want to reach out and get as many people involved in providing their input as possible. In terms of resources to this committee, I've spoken with Mr. Kearns and Ms. McNamara. Because the focus is not development as it was in the past, and it's on environment, beautification, and the people gathering place, that puts it more in the purview of Public Works. So either Ashley or Carly, we've had conversations with them about providing administrative support in terms of secretariat services and minutes, and actually supporting the meetings, Ms. McNamara or Brad Wheeler if Ms. McNamara wasn't available. And those individuals, I mean, April and her team work closely with the DBA. the downtown waterfront and the harbor area as part of the DBA. So there's a lot of commonality with what this committee's role is in Public Works, and particularly Ms. McNamara and Brad.
And a time frame in which this might roll out, Mr. Harris?
This was just added back to the agenda recently, so I mean, I think it'll be as soon in the future as we can get it out, but I can't give you a date. It's going to be in the paper on.
Thank you.
But in the very near future.
Councillor McCann, then Councillor Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to put the councillors' concerns at rest. First of all, these meetings are open to the public, so the public will at least have an opportunity to participate. Well, at least hear what's going on. I gather that the committee will be responsive to input from the public. I think it was John Lennon who said, "Life is what happens when you're busy making plans," and I think while we're talking about development and future plans and strategic plans and the whole thing, this group is on the front line, and they're doing the day-to-day things now and want to make reference and to as I said before, be the eyes of Parry Sound on our waterfront and be able to advise on the kind of work that needs to be done, whether it's beautification or remediation or what have you. Mr. Clayton Harris used the word stewardship, and that's what this group's all about. There are no decisions coming from this organization, so I don't, and it is an advisory capacity, so they're not, really into planning, but they can certainly submit ideas and advice, and I think that's the whole idea.
Councillor Keith, and then Councillor Borneman for a follow-up.
Thank you. Mine will be brief. One was, yes, this is an advisory committee, so they make no decisions. All decisions end up coming eventually to council, who makes the decisions. They just make recommendations. I think also realistically or practically, to have that recreation plan to be approved of before the next election, I think we'll be doing awful good if we can get that all into place before the next election. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think the people that are chosen to be on the committee, I'm sure they're all going to be doing their best. But I think, yes, it's good to get on with it and see how far we can get. Thank you.
Councillor Borneman.
Maybe in my advancing years, I don't hear as well as I once did, but I just want to be certain the way Councillor McCann worded some of what he was saying, what sounded to me like I just want it clear that there is no committee today. Council will send out an advertisement and select those who will participate in this, and so there is no group. Anyone who wishes to be involved can apply to be involved, and we move forward with a blank slate, not with a preconceived notion of where we are.
Councillor McCann.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Borneman. I'm sorry if I misled you in that way, and I did probably make use of my phraseology less consciously.
I just want the public to be aware that they are able to jump in here and have their 2 cents if they choose.
And I think we've probably received word from the public, I've had an email or two where people are interested in participating. So yeah, there's no committee. We're just basically hearing from a couple of people who sat on the committee before and believe that this work needs to be done.
Yep. Okay, are we good? Okay. Anyone opposed to passing this resolution as amended? No, that's good. It's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Burden, that council approve the 2021 Municipal Assistance Program allocations per attached to Schedule A. And I will read those out. So for the Municipal Assistance Program allocations, economic development, absolutely Georgian Bay, $1,652. Parry Sound Area CB and DC Incorporated, $2,002. The Business Center, Nipissing Parry Sound, $1,945, for a total of $5,599. $451 will remain in the budget for post allocation. The Municipal Assistance Program for nonprofit allocations, McPherson at 295 McPherson Squadron, $939. Strings Across the Sky, $660. Georgian Bay Biosphere Apiary, $789. Parry Sound Forest School, $846. Parry Sound District EMS Toy Drive, $760. Parry Sound Saltos Gym Club, $718, for a total of $4,712, and $238 will remain in the budget for post allocation. Councillor Borneman.
Remain in the budget for post budget allocation. What exactly does that mean?
Ms. McNamara.
Through your worship, Councillor Borneman, it just means that all the funds in that budget have not been spent, and you will have a few remaining dollars if an organization comes forward at the end of the year, post-program close.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if, in fairness to those who have come forward and applied on time and in accordance with the program, if we don't just round those numbers up and go from there.
Well, I can only speak from past history, and that is we've, I hate using this phrase, but this is the way that we have done it. But there have been organizations that have come forward in the past, partway through the year or later in the year, that we wanted to support, and the money was used, that leftover money was used to support those organizations. So that's typically what it was.
You're right. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, Councillor Backman. Oh, sorry,
thank you,
Councillor.
Your
Sorry, Councillor Keith was first, and then you.
I must be sitting in the wrong spot.
I think it's the way my eyes are, whatever. I'm
That's
not
okay.
seeing it.
That's okay. So in the event that that's what I want clarification. In the event though, that no organization comes forth, is that amount of money allowed to be like a little bit of an extra carry over for next year? Or is that those funds, in other words, at the end of the year, those funds will go, we'll start off from scratch again, zero, and those funds will be put wherever they need be?
Through your worship, those funds are not rolled over. Those that the budget is zeroed out. We start at scratch again next year, Councillor Keith, with whatever amount council approves for this grant program.
Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess just in regards to your comment about other organizations coming throughout the year and us wanting to support, I recognize that, but we do have a policy in place, and I think it's important that we stay stern with our policies. So I still personally would encourage that we do look at taking this budget and dispersing it amongst the people who did take it among them to get their applications in within this time period and follow the policy.
I'm not sure whether the policy says we have to spend the whole allocation. you know, there have been circumstances that have come up in the past, and you know, for some special circumstance that we've used this money to support a particular project or a particular idea, something or whatever. But you know something, I'll leave that with council. If they want to change that and do that, that's up to them. Councillor McCann.
Yeah, certainly we can always change the policy, in fact, but I would just, I tend to want to leave it alone at this point, because the numbers that have been, the amounts that have been calculated have been based on percentages from all of the councillors who decided how much each organization should get. So if I thought A was more worthy than B, and you know, that's what I believe it should be, and that's what we were. That was the amount of money we were given to work with, and this is what we were asked that we thought they should get. And I think that to keep it as it is somewhat respectful of what council's wishes were for the allocation of the money into each group.
Councillor Keith, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. I guess I am going along something of the same line as Councillor McCann, in that I think we pride ourselves in being a very caring community. So sometimes there are situations, there may be a new organization that comes into play after the matter has come to council that realizes they would be able to apply. And I think we need to be flexible enough to allow that. I think that's part of showing that in this town, we are a caring community, and we can understand sometimes situations develop that we need to be flexible for. So I think we should just continue the way we have. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further with regard to this? No. Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? I don't see anyone opposed. That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burton, second by Councillor Keith, that council approves sole sourcing the Geographic Information System GIS modernization study under the Municipal Modernization Program MMP Intake 2 to Parry Group Consulting based on the firm's completion of the Town of Parry Sound's technology review and the funding deadline provided by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Questions, comments? Councillor Borneman.
We don't generally sole source things, but I fully understand and appreciate why it's suggested here. I just want to be sure that in doing so that we're not jeopardizing any of that ministry funding.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that this doesn't jeopardize any such thing. If anything, the converse of not completing the study on time, that could certainly jeopardize the funding. And through my preliminary discussions with MMAH, I'm not sure they're going to give any extensions on this.
Thank you, Mr. Pengra.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor McCann?
Yeah, sure. For Mr. Pengra, then could, in English, could you explain what this is all about, what this entails?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, it has a fancy name, but what does it boil down to?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So actually, I'm pleased to explain it a little bit. My background is in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. That's what I went to university for. That's what I specialized in, and that's where my career really began. And so, Geographic Information Systems is a fancy way of saying digital mapping. But digital mapping has changed throughout the years to be more encompassing with how businesses work. How information is stored. The vast majority of what we do as municipalities can be referenced to a real world location. whether it's tax roll, whether it's, say, species at risk. There is almost always a real world correlation. And our business is changing, and so much of how data is consumed and passed through and driven by the public, by staff, is through web mapping applications. And I'm sure quite a number of you are very familiar with the West Parry Sound Geography Network. A lot of people have made it a part of their normal lives, and we're not talking people with significant technical background. It's a very useful tool for many, many people. And so earlier this year, when the Parry group gave us our first report, the technology review, which studied really how the town of Parry Sound utilizes technology, and maybe better yet, how we don't utilize technology presently, they identified the need for doing a more in-depth and thorough geographic information system study. They obviously know very well that GIS plays such a pivotal role in how municipalities consume and share information, that they didn't want to underscore what that level of importance. Historically, the town's geographic information system largely revolved around me as the data custodian, but the needs are growing. We have more people consuming it now than ever before. And so to really understand what our needs are from a technical and from a workflow standpoint for geographic information, we absolutely need to complete this study. It'll identify not just if there's gaps in data or in technology, but if there's gaps in human resources, gaps in skills and training. So it's incredibly important that we pursue this.
Thank you. It is important to keep up with the times. It's like go with the flow or get out of the way because you'll get run over. And quite frankly, I'm still having a hard time figuring out how to work a smartphone. So you know where I'm standing with that. But this is all good. Thank you so much.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pengra. I certainly received the impression that the company, this consulting company, has been very efficient, easy to work with, and they've been efficient. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't tell you how great they've been to work with. They've been incredibly efficient and thorough. But I think really what's of most benefit right now, given our condensed timelines, they already have these relationships built, and some of the initial legwork, albeit maybe just more surface level, has already been completed. So I think they're not starting from point zero. They're a bit further ahead, and I think that's really going to benefit us as we work through this plan, because it's a tremendous amount of work to go through.
Where I'm having the issue, because I really do think it should be sourced out rather than a single source. I understand that we are working on a specific time, but if they're as efficient as indicated, then if an RFP is put out and they are still the best choice, seems to me the chances are they ought to be able to get it down by the November date. In the meantime, if there's another company that's able to do just as good a job and maybe cheaper, we may be saying afterwards, why didn't we at least examine it? Because it seems to me here a policy, it seems like it is possible that we could get it done just as efficient but by another company. I just don't see that it's necessary for us to continue with the same company when we have that opportunity to put out an RFP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can speak to that. I guess from a couple points. Obviously we've been very happy with Parry Group. That goes without saying. The interesting aspect of this phase 2 project is the involvement of a third party. And so that third party, his name's Paul Giroux, and he has founded and designed a widely received maturity model It's a particular tool set that is being used heavily throughout the United States for measuring, monitoring, and improving life cycle management and maturity. Because he has I've had a relationship with him. I guess this goes back probably 9 years. And when he was working through his master's thesis, the town of Parry Sound was actually featured in his master's thesis study, for which the maturity framework was designed. And so not only do we have the unique perspective of having a subject matter expert, he also has our historic maturity information, which is it's incredibly valuable because he, maintaining such logs for his master's thesis, he has everything. So he knows that we're not at that point. So we've matured to a certain extent, and I think there's some value there as well. And in any normal situation, I absolutely 100% agree with you that going to tender, RFP, what have you, it's a very valuable exercise. And in truth, we're really obligated to do it. My concern right now is the time frame required for a full competitive process, and to actually get it out for RFP, let alone review the responses and schedule in the consultants. It is very, very tight.
Councillor McCann.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm speaking apples and oranges here, and I know that Councillor Borneman and Councillor Keith have been at this table many more years than I have. But in terms of soul sourcing, maybe they're the same. We don't go out looking for an auditor every year. We don't go looking to necessarily go looking for an EMS contract every year. Now I realize that some of these contracts have an expiry date, but I'm certainly, and certainly in light of what Mr. Pengra has talked about, I think that this is a good idea, prudent idea to go ahead with the status quo as we move ahead. And as Forrest has commented, they've proven themselves. So I don't think council could be blamed if we suddenly found another source provider 6 or 7 months down the line that was going to do it for a few $1,000s cheaper. Sometimes in the long run, that ends up costing us more money. So I would certainly support this.
Any further, Councillor Bachman?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just to, I guess, comment in regard to the RFP process, knowing what Ms. McNamara has experienced going out with the recreation RFP for 2 years in a row and not get any recipients, I would hate for that to happen here and put us in a position that we aren't meeting the deadline of the grants. On another note, I do know, being an IT systems coordinator for many years, the extent of the carryover of information that comes from one to the other. And though there may be a cost savings from a consulting perspective that may potentially come out, I think the time that would be put on our staff to bring any group up to date and, to lose the opportunity of having that insight, which really, in my opinion and my experience, creates a lot of efficiencies with this process moving forward. So I do, based on the information that I've heard from Forrest, Mr. Pengra this evening, and the council comments that Mr. McCann has made, that I would support this.
Mr. Pengra.
The last thing I'd like to mention, Mr. Mayor, is through discussions with some various colleagues, it seems pretty well everyone who's applied for intake 2 of MMAH funding has gotten it. Now, what that does is that creates a tremendous amount of competition for these third-party studies. And the truth of the matter is there's really not that many to go around. And so even in talking with the Parry group, there was concern about capacity, but they have confirmed that they are available starting in September for us, and they have space allotted for us to guarantee completion before deadline.
Good. Anything further? Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Not seeing anyone opposed. That's carried. Thank you. Item 951, moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that council support Sale Parry Sound submitting a Phase 2 grant application to FedNor to undertake improvements on town-owned property leased to Sale Parry Sound, subject to obtaining appropriate agency approvals, liability insurance, and the town being a named insured. The council approved funding to an upset limit of $20,000 for the project, and that the town provide a letter of support for inclusion with the application. Discussion? Councillor McCann?
Yes, thank you. I'm in support of this. I wonder maybe perhaps Mr. Harris could tell us what is involved here in or what this application.
Through the mayor, I might suggest that Mr. Kearns provide comments and as a start.
Certainly, through your worship, and I think we have several members as well of Sale Parry Sound on the line, and they may be able to provide some additional information. So this spring, it was noted, I think we've had this discussion with council previously when Sale Parry Sound came forward with some of the potential remediation that was needed to the shoreline surrounding their operation at Sale Parry Sound. The impacts of weather over the last couple of years have been pretty significant down there, with erosion essentially removing the work that had been previously done along the shoreline. So I believe Sale Parry Sound has put together an application for funding through FedNor, and I'd have to look at what the acronym stands for exactly, but it's through FedNor. And they have included Town of Parry Sound, as we are the property owner, as one of the contributors to the project, and that would be in relation to the resolution that council had previously passed, asking for a number of things to be provided in terms of information related to the potential project, and council had committed potentially up to $20,000 at that point toward the remediation of the shoreline. So the town is listed and they are requesting our support as the property owner. They lease the land from the town and they have responsibilities as far as maintenance and that sort of thing. So they would be the lead agency. The property owner will be supporting through a letter of support. And I believe that they have obtained some preliminary letters of opinion from an engineering firm and a preliminary estimate from a local construction firm regarding the potential costs involved with the work that's being proposed. I believe the total was $182,000 they had. So I believe in their funding application, they're requesting $150,000 from FedNor, with their own organization contributing $12,000 and the town contributing $20,000. So I'm hoping I answered everything there. If not, please feel free to ask.
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions? Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? No, that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor Burden, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound hereby decides to stop up and close portion of the Gibson Street Road, 5 Gibson Street, Shaw allowance as identified as Part 1 on Schedule A, and further that the applicant submits a deposit of $2,000 to pay for all legal costs. That the requirement for a notice of the closure and declaration of surplus lands be waived, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute an agreement of purchase and sale and any necessary paperwork to finalize the transaction. Discussion? Councillor Burden?
I'm going to excuse myself.
Yep.
And you have me on there as a seconder. That probably isn't going to work.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Better stroke that one out. Can I have a new seconder? Councillor McCann. Okay, comments? Oh, Councillor McCann?
I'm sorry, did you call for discussion and the things froze here? Okay, so I guess, would this be for Mr. LG then to speak on behalf of this? I'm just looking at some aerial photographs here, and I'm not quite sure what's being asked here. It's not a full lot that we're closing up. So what exactly are we doing here then?
Through your worship, if you go to page 4 of my report, I copied and pasted the reference plan, the survey that was done. You can see the road allowance, which is the line that goes all the way through. Then there's a box called Part 1. Part 1 is the area of the road allowance that is recommended to be disposed of to the owner of that lot. Reason being, you can actually see historically a little bit of the house has always existed on it since it was originally constructed.
Mr. LG, you clicked your mute button.
Was I muted the entire time, or did it just?
No, just we heard the bit about the house being from conception being on the property line or on that piece of property. So, and then you went.
Okay, I don't even remember touching anything, so I won't do that again, I guess. So anyways, the area land recommended to be disposed of is the Part 1. The house was originally built decades ago with the house on it. You can see it in the plan there. There's a little bit encroaching on it. Long story short, recently they renovated the home, and in order to redo the steps and the house, they need to get a building permit. A permit was conditionally issued upon them either getting an encroachment agreement or the land. Staff is of the opinion that the land should be given, especially after talking to our lawyer. It reduces annual insurance swaps, it reduces town liability, and it's only 18 square meters, so it's very small, so there's no impact upon the road. And it's likely if a sidewalk was to ever occur on Gibson Street, it would be on the north side of the roadway, so not this side, so it shouldn't impact any future road design or road improvements.
So forgive me then, so this lot, this Part 1, can you access it from Bay as well as from Gibson Street then? Does it go right up or down, whichever?
So that Part 1, that rectangle, is actually a portion of the road allowance today. So when you're looking at the air mapping, this doesn't exist yet. It would only exist if council makes a decision. Then it would just be a small little tiny notch out of the road allowance.
Okay, yeah, I think I understand here now. And you say the sidewalk would be on the other side on Gibson if it was ever to be done so then?
Yeah, staff had internal discussions on that, and that's our preliminary opinion without having done any engineering, obviously, so with the necessary caveats.
Okay, that helps. Thanks very much.
Councillor Keith?
Yes, Mr. Elgin, could you advise, are there other areas in the town of Parry Sound where we have done something similar, please?
Through your worship, since I've been at the town, I don't recall us doing this. Historically, we've done a lot of encroachment agreements, which is similar. We did one on 4 River Street, for instance, a year or 2 ago. So there are quite a few encroachment agreements where essentially it's a lease in perpetuity that always exists while that house is there. But After having a quick discussion with our lawyer, he said, if you have no purpose for it, it is advantageous to actually dispose of the lands, because then it creates clear divisions of who owns what and whose responsibilities are where, versus an encroachment agreement in a situation of a permanent encumbrance like this. It's just a lot more paperwork, a lot more annual, well, the annual paperwork of insurance swaps can be a bit of a hassle. And if the land ever sells and you have to find out the new owner and go through that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harris?
Just to add to that, in this case, it's a side or a set of stairs, and that just creates the opportunity for slips and falls. And so it's a small sliver of land. Sell it to the owner. That way, if somebody slips on those stairs, they won't name the town as a potential liability. So.
Okay. Anything further on this one? No. Anyone opposed to passing this resolution? No. Then that's carried. So moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Backman, that bylaw number 2021-7151 being a bylaw to stop up and close a portion of Gibson Street Road Allowance, 5 Gibson Street, Shaw, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. By Councillor Backman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion on this? Anyone opposed to passing this bylaw? Oh, that's carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Burden, second by, oh, there he is, he's back. Okay, moved by Councillor Burden and second by Councillor Borneman, that bylaw number 2021-7152 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement with the Minister of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs related to funding provided by the province to the municipality under the Rural Economic Development Program be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion? Okay. Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? Nope. That's carried then. Okay, this is a bylaw that was postponed to the July meeting, and it had to do with a bylaw to return the management of 101 long-term care beds to the Ministry of Long-Term Care, and to be relocated to a campus of care at the West Parry Sound Health Center. It had first and second reading. So for the third reading, moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Borneman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Councillor Borneman for discussion.
Well, first of all, thank you, Your Worship. Since we met last, there have been a number of developments. I think that council should be aware by now that McKellar, McDougall, and Seguin have each passed this bylaw in support of doing this. And I think you've been provided with the resolution from the West Parry Sound Health Center also in support of doing this. In discussing this with staff, I'm going to propose that there be a minor amendment to the bylaw, Mr. Mayor, that immediately after the words "now therefore," we insert on the premise that all units will stay in Parry Sound.
Is there a seconder for that? There's lots of seconders.
Okay.
I'll go with Councillor McCann because he's on the board with you.
It's clear from, the background that the intent is that that's what we're trying to present to the ministry, but it does not actually say that in the bylaw. So I just want to be certain that we're on record for having done that. So maybe we could vote on that amendment unless there's further comment.
So is there further comment on the amendment? Councillor McCann.
I wonder, it comes down to, I'll use the word that Councillor Borneman used, semantics. When you put the words together, should we specify the municipality of Parry Sound? Because as a district home, it's supported by the West Parry Sound district. So how would the ministry take that, I suppose? So I think that may be something that we want to consider. Unless, of course, if the beds were in Seguin Township or elsewhere, the fact is that they'd be in our catchment area, which is good. There was some concern from some of us that, well, what if we lose the beds altogether? And this area has been defined as being underserviced. And just recently a private operator opened up in North Bay. But that's something that happened it got started 6 years ago. So I think right now, in view of the pandemic and the concerns over private operators with long-term care, giving back the beds or the license for that, it's kind of like putting your cards on the table. But I think our board felt that there was no risk of losing the beds to another area or to a private operator. So, but getting back to the wording, should we be specifying the municipality rather than the district in this?
Well,
yeah, Councillor Barnum. Yep.
We can go as far as council wants, in wording anything. I think it's pretty clear that a development of this size, and I'm pretty certain the board and the West Parry Sound Health Center are going to be spelled out clearly that our intent is that this be on the hospital property. That's what our target is. So I'm happy with what's there. If somebody else wants to suggest something further, let her rip.
Councillor McCann.
Well, I respect what Councillor Borneman is saying, and in all likelihood, that's what will happen. But it always comes down to the fine print. The campus of care, I would ask Councillor Borneman if the boundaries have actually been established for the campus, because we're bordering on the Seguin Township as well. And is that a concern? So I would, I like using the word municipality, and I think I would sleep better at night. But as it's a very, very low risk.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if it would make Councillor McCann happy, insert town of Parry Sound, and I think that covers all the bases.
So, as the mover and seconder, is that a friendly amendment?
It is on my heart.
My heart too. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Borneman.
So, Ms. Johnson, do you then now have the amendment?
The proposed amendment I have is that where the now therefore clause begins, it will now read, now therefore, on the premise that the units will stay in the town of Parry Sound, the town of Parry Sound enacts as follows.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? No. All those in favor? Okay. Anyone opposed to the amendment? No. Okay, good. All right. Discussion on the bylaw as amended. Councillor Borneman.
So just one further update, as you indicated earlier, Mr. Mayor, targets with the province continue to move. Nothing sits still. Chair of the board, Ms. Gregory, and myself and our staff, a couple of staff people have a meeting this Thursday morning with the life lease residents. Space is confined and numbers are restricted still because of COVID. So I at first I had hoped to be able to invite other members of council who might want to attend to do so, but I'm told that space will not allow for that. So I'm going to suggest to council the meeting with the ministry has been delayed a short while. It's up to council whether it's your choice whether we pass this evening or we hear from the life lease residents in advance of doing so. They are taxpayers, ratepayers, and residents in the town of Parry Sound. Hearing them after we've done this is sort of saying we're doing this anyway, regardless of what your feelings are. So, you know, I'm advised that the archipelago has put their meeting off until August the 20th. So if this were to go to August the 10th, and I promise to faithfully report back how many knives get thrown in my direction on Thursday morning, assuming I survive, I'm fine with that. If we wish to proceed tonight, I'm also fine with that.
So you're asking now to postpone this until August the 10th?
I think, you know, ethically and morally, I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay. Yep. Councillor McCann?
Yeah, and I would agree with Councillor Borneman. I think it's a good suggestion. Part of this this whole project is communicating with everybody that's involved, and there are a lot of stakeholders, and there are a lot of moving targets, and it's like you need a new program every week to keep up with the score. Okay. So I don't know. This is the third reading. I guess we haven't voted on it yet. I'm certainly okay with Councillor Borneman's suggestion.
Okay, so I have to ask now. Actually, I have to ask now, Councillor Keith, because I've got two people that want to do this.
I haven't asked for a postponement yet. I understand how this works, and I think others should have their opportunity to speak.
Okay, all right. I'm good with that. I just wanted to make sure here. So, Councillor Keith, then.
Yes, thank you. I have a question, and it is not at this point about the postponement, and I've heard what the Councillor Borneman has said about that. Not really opposed, but what I need to have clarification in, and it may be my math, but I'm just wondering again, is this semantics or what? I wonder if I could have clarification, because when I read the material, and maybe I'm missing something, but what I read is that Belvedere Heights, of course, was 101, and then they're awarded 24 beds more, and then in the spring with another 35, and that makes 160. Is that clear?
That's 160 is
a little generous.
Pardon me, but
a little generous.
No, we'll be asking for the 160. That's in the business. That's thought to be the optimum number to best utilize your staffing complement within the ministry's funding envelopes. It makes it most efficient. So we'll be asking for additional beds to make up, to get us to the 160.
Thank you. I'm clarified now. Thank you.
Councillor Bachman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question is for Councillor Borneman or Councillor McCann in regards to the transition of this. I understand there's some concern about the assurance of potentially losing these beds to the private sector. And I'm just wondering what conversations have been had around that topic.
Well, I personally, and I think Councillor McCann will verify this or will agree with this, that, you know, the ministry's moving away from the private sector for-profit model at this point, is pretty much as fast as they can, because of all of the stuff that's happened, all of the negative publicity that's happened through COVID. We, as Councillor McCann indicated earlier, we're designated as underserviced. So I think there's like a 0% chance that you'll see a private operator in here. That's not something that's, and as I said previously, we have been in communication with ministry officials about this for some time, and you know, that's the indication that we get from them as well, that they want a publicly operated facility. That's sort of non-negotiable.
Gotcha.
Okay, Councillor
Thank you.
McCann.
Yeah, and to answer, to follow up with Councillor Borneman's answer to Councillor Backman, I agree. There's a that's a real hot topic right now with the private operators, and there are some good ones that are out there. So we shouldn't paint them all with the same brush, but there are lots that are just in it for the dollar, and they try to get by as cheaply as can, and things happen. And you know, when you've got weak links, things start to fall apart when you have something like a pandemic. And so that came through. When I read about this private operator opening up in North Bay, I kind of got my attention, and I thought, well, is this going to happen here? And when I read the press release, it really sounded like this government was taking credit for it, when in fact this was something that got started 6 years ago. So I don't think that's a precedent that even exists where we're concerned. So at Belvedere, the location at this point, it's a beautiful spot, and it overlooks Georgian Bay, and it's really something else. But the fact is, as I mentioned at our last meeting, we've outgrown it, and we have too many rooms that are shared, which means shared bathrooms. That's not acceptable anymore in this day and age. And we just are landlocked in so many ways. Parking is a problem. You name it, it's an issue. And if we're going to grow, if we're going to provide those 160 beds, we ain't going to do it up on the hill. So, you know, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have to do something. As we've been reminded by one of our board members, Don Carmichael, who's had extensive experience in this business, this is the way you have to do it. So we rescind our license, and we in good faith expect that the ministry will return the beds to this campus of care model. And again, the attempt is to recreate Belvedere in the campus of care. So Belvedere itself is not going away. And it took a long time for me to agree to this. I was skeptical and rather concerned. I didn't like the way things were going. But I've been sold on it, and I think it's a good idea. And I think long-term vision, this is going to do the entire West District a lot more service than the status quo is right now. So I don't believe that I'm losing sleep at night worrying about these beds leaving the area or going to a private operator. So I think, as Councillor Borneman said, we can move ahead confidently, knowing we'll have those beds in the campus of care.
I'd just like to thank both Councillor McCann and Councillor Borneman for your efforts on this initiative, and really moving forward with a vision for the future for the community, And, I do support this, and it is great that we have, are unfortunate that we have seen what has been a result of the private sector through this pandemic, and hearing that the governments, higher levels of governments are looking to rectify some of those issues by putting these things in place is very positive for our long-term care. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any more discussion on this bylaw? Are you still wanting to postpone?
Well, I was going to speak to that. If I guess I was thinking this would just require another amendment. It's probably better to just postpone it for another meeting rather than put an amendment in this saying that there's a condition that, because we really do need to hear from the life lease owners before we move ahead. And I think it'd be very incumbent upon us to delay this one more time. We're not going to be able to do anything until the end of August anyway. So I don't know what that means. Do we just postpone it then?
We postpone it. I'm trying to get this meeting wrapped up here. So let's.
Mr. Mayor, I'm asking that this go to August 10th. We're meeting with the Life Lease residents this week.
Okay.
We're not going to look. This is, as I tried to say the last time out, this is an opening salvo to open discussions with the province. We've got no money. We've got no plan. We've got no design. This is a concept. This is a way to open discussion with the ministry about how to provide better service in Parry Sound. And basically that's all we're going to be able to tell. If you were a resident up there and your home was threatened by this, you'd have concerns too. We need to give them opportunity to, and the information that we have before we move ahead, I think.
No, that's good. I just need to know. So
thank you.
You two, Councillor Borneman and Councillor McCann, are moving to postpone it.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. All in favor of postponing? That's carried. So okay. All right, moved by Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Backlund. The bylaw number 2021-7153 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor Bachman, second by Councillor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? No, that's carried. Okay, prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, August 10th, 2021 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held via Zoom video conferencing and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. The council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas, minutes, and instructions on accessing live, streamed, and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website at www.parrysound.ca under News and Public Notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Everyone take care and stay safe.
Night, everyone. Thank you.